So I read a couple of books this season, and you know, maybe a better booktuber would have read all of these in a single month, but for me it took 3. Mathematically, it's about 1 book a week for 3 months, which I am impressed with, and it's also a lot of really good books. But before I get too far into it, I should introduce myself. For those of you who don't know, my name's Gavin Vale, and I read books. It's my job. Well, it's not my job, but it will be. And today we're going to be talking about every single book I read in the entire season of Autumn. My plan is to talk about the books in the order that I read them, and this is actually my first official reading wrap-up video. So I do want to let you guys know I will not be spoiling anything. I'll talk about things in very vague terms or just based on what the back of the book says. No actual plot spoilers or anything. But enough from me, okay? Let's talk about our first book. Let's ride the sands of time and go back to the very beginning of September. It all started with The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I would say this is a historical fiction fantasy romance book. It follows 2 young rival magicians and their competition in the Night Circus, which is a circus, but you probably figured that out. I was 99% sure I would not like this book. I'm not really a big circus guy, except for The Greatest Showman, okay? If we're talking Greatest Showman, guilty as charged. So when my book club voted this, I was a little bit concerned. And to my surprise, I ended up giving it 5 stars and writing an entire review on my Instagram story, which I've never done before. This book is really freaking good. The Night Circus is not your ordinary circus. Let me read you the first line of the book. The circus arrives without warning. No announcements to precede it, no paper notices on downtown posts or billboards, no mentions or advertisements in local newspapers. It is simply there, when yesterday it was not. That's such a cool way to frame it. I honestly started the book and instantly realized, oh, this is actually gonna be pretty good. And the magicians are actual magicians, right? It's not just card trips. It's like, oh my gosh, I just walked into a tent and the entire thing is full of ice and snow. And over there in the corner, there is a bush of roses that are made of ice. How do you even do that? It's awesome. It's cool. Like I mentioned, the story follows 2 magicians, Marco and Celia. And their entire lives, their instructors have been training them for a competition they know nothing about. A competition against each other. And when they're finally adults and ready to compete, they don't even know who they're competing against. It's honestly just a beautiful story about 2 people who spend years competing and making this circus even better and more magical and wonderful, until eventually every single attraction that Marco's made to prove himself better than Celia, they start to turn into love letters to her. So in a way, you could say it's enemies to lovers. The romance is super satisfying, the plot is really interesting, and the coolest part is, it's not even just the main 2 characters. Every character has their charm, and you just want to see where the plot goes with them. Like, I love the 2 main characters, of course, but my favorite character isn't either of them. This book also has a really weird thing where every few chapters, it's written in 2nd-person perspective. I've never read a book in 2nd-person perspective, but that basically means the book is writing to you. Like, it says, you walk through the gates, you smell popcorn or whatever, which is totally weird and jarring, but also kind of cool. And I think that if you listen to it in like an audiobook form, that could be a really cool scene to experience. And the audiobook is super good. I think it's narrated by the guy who did the American Harry Potter books. So I honestly recommend both the book and the audiobook. That being said, if you're gonna get the physical book, please go to Blackwell's and get the UK cover. This is not a sponsor. The UK cover is just way prettier. I don't know why, but the United Kingdom knows how to make book covers unlike any other country in the world. The American Night Circus cover is just kind of sad, but we cannot talk about this book forever, okay? As much as I would love to, we have to move on. The next book I read in September was 5 Broken Blades by Mai Cortland. It's an adult romantasy following 6 characters, which is already kind of confusing because it's called 5 Broken Blades, but there's 6 main characters. But anyways, these characters have the goal of killing the king of Yusan. All of them want to do this. And you know, they are technically criminals, but realistically, the king is pretty bad. The poor of his kingdom suffer, the innocent get thrown in jail, and he did commit genocide once or twice. So, you know, he has it coming. And the premise is certainly interesting. I mean, 6 criminals is going to be full of betrayal and backstabbing and plot twists, but this book was not my favorite. And I really hate talking negatively about books because I don't feel like I want to spread more of that. There's enough negative stuff on the internet already that everybody sees every day. But dude, this book, it just was not it. This book was not it. It has too many characters and not enough of them are interesting. Like one chapter, I'd be reading about this woman, Sora, and she's super interesting. She's been forced to be a poison maiden, which is basically an assassin who uses poison her entire life, or the last 10 years, I think. And she has to, right? She has no choice to. And so she's kind of the type of character that's like, she's a criminal because, you know, she has killed people, but it's not like she wants to or she loves it. Like, she very much does not want to be doing this. And so there's a bit of redemption in her story, of course, but then you flip the page And then you get to Royo's chapters. Let me tell you, I want to love Royo. And even like throughout the book, I like 60% of his stuff. The problem is that the other 40% of the time is whenever he's around his love interest, right? And if she is in the vicinity of this man, he becomes a horny middle schooler, which is not a good combination of traits, especially for like a grizzled 30-year-old mercenary. It's not a good look, okay? It's painful to read. It makes me cringe. It's just, it was not great. And Sora and the interesting plot twists and all of that just wasn't enough to pull this story together to make me like care at all. And on top of all of that, the romance is very instant love. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a sucker for a good slow burn romance. I love that stuff. But it's like somebody sees someone else and instantly the spark is a blazing bonfire. And the sexual tension between these characters who have never met before is literally impossible and really freaking annoying. You know, I'm not a hater of spice, right? But it's just, why? Maybe I'm a hypocrite, okay? You know what? That instantaneous, just head over heels love is the reason I bought this book. Because, I mean, look at it. This is like, these are the most gorgeous sprite edges I've ever seen in my life. So, you know, I bought it for a very shallow reason, and this is what I get for doing that. But yeah, I think I gave it 2 stars, and I don't recommend this one. But luckily, next we have a book that I don't think I will ever be able to stop talking about. Scythe by Neil Shusterman. And you know what? I can't lie to you. I want to be honest with everybody. I also have Thunderhead and The Toll. I read these books back to back to back, and they are all so good. I'm going to try to keep it brief for now because I want to make an entire video about this series, but it's 5 stars. All of them, every book is a 5-star series. It takes place in the distant future, okay? It's a young adult dystopia. I would say the vibes are kind of similar to the Hunger Games, not the plot like whatsoever, but you know, young adult dystopia, early 2000s, that type of thing. If you want to read a book like the Hunger Games, read Powerless. That is the Hunger Games, actually, just fantasy. But this book follows 2 Scythe apprentices. Now, what is a Scythe? Well, basically, the main premise of this book is at some point in history, humanity created a benevolent AI who is capable of learning and figuring out everything. And as a result of that, hunger and misery and death are just non-existent anymore. But the, you know, AI overlord determined that with the rate of population growth, because people still want to have kids, they still want to, you know, get it on, a certain amount of humans still have to die despite the fact that, you know, they're immortal. And that's where the Scythes come in. The Scythes are an organization of people who dish out death. And I think the most compelling part of this story is the fact that the 2 apprentices don't want to be Scythes. And that trait is the most important one for a Scythe to have. Because the question this book then asks is what happens when the people who dish out death start to enjoy it. Those of you who have read this book already probably understand what I'm about to say, but I have never opened a story before and had so many instances where I've had to put my finger in the pages, close the book, and just look at the ceiling and think about what I just read. This book is so thought-provoking. At the beginning of every chapter, there's a little journal excerpt from different Scythes, because that's one of the rules. If you're a Scythe, you have to keep a public journal of every day of your life. And in most books, I would say that type of intro thing before a chapter, I kind of skip over, like it's kind of boring to me. But I think the journal entries in Scythe might be my favorite part. And in the sequels, a similar thing is employed at the beginning of every chapter. And honestly, in Thunderhead might be my favorite. The all-powerful AI is called the Thunderhead, and so, you know, it might not be a surprise to you, but Book 2, Thunderhead, talks a lot about the AI. I would say it's almost a main character in the sequel. And, you know, especially nowadays, AI is kind of a trending topic, something that, you know, everybody should be informed of to a certain extent. But this book has a really interesting take on it, because most sci-fi fiction about AI overlords, you know, depicts them as evil robots that are, you know, killing people and taking over the world. But inside, the AI appears to be genuinely good and have the best interests of humanity at mind. And so it's a really interesting take. Honestly, I could talk about that for hours, but, you know, I need to save this all for a video, and I need to talk about all the other books I read. But just know, even if like you're a fantasy girly or you're just someone who doesn't really read sci-fi, try Scythe. I promise you, you won't regret it. We read this book as part of my community book club, and you know, the majority of the book club members are romance fans, and they love this book so much more than I was expecting. Okay, I was so happy when people were losing their minds during the discussions. And don't worry, there is definitely romance in here. Okay, it's a subplot, but I would say it's an important part of the story. This book just literally has everything you could ever ask for from a dystopian novel, and it's just so freaking interesting. But we must move on. Next, I read The Brothers Hawthorne, which is book 3.5 of the Inheritance games. I say 3.5 because it's kind of a spin-off that takes place during the time jump in the last book, and it's told from the perspective of Grayson Hawthorne and Jameson Hawthorne. I'm not going to spoil anything in the story for those of you who have not read the Inheritance games, but I will tell you, I never found Grayson Hawthorne to be a super interesting character. I think the majority of the fans will disagree with me, and you know what? That's okay. But I never liked Grayson until I read this book, and oh my god, the character arc this man gets in this book is so freaking interesting. And when I put it down, I finally realized, I was like, okay, you know what? I get it, you guys. I get it. I know why you like Grayson so much. I think this is the best book in the entire Inheritance game series, to be honest. And it's also the longest, even though it's not part of the main trilogy. It is the longest one. It's got like 470 pages, which is like, damn. I also low-key think it's the prettiest one. But if you've read the main trilogy, you got to read this book, okay? I think the mystery is the best. The character interactions are the best, and the perspectives are the best. And to top it all off, under the dust cover, it's purple, which is the best color. If you haven't read the Inheritance games also, read the Inheritance games. I would say it's a quintessential young adult mystery novel. It's been compared to Knives Out before. It's basically about a girl who wakes up one day and gets summoned to a will reading. Turns out it's the will for a billionaire named Tobias Hawthorne, and she inherits all of his stuff. And the real kicker is she has no idea who this guy is. And on top of that, he has 4 attractive grandsons, 3 of which are her age. So there's romance. It's not a harem though, okay? I would say it's more a love triangle. So, you know, have fun with that. I hate love triangles. I like the book, so you take that as you will. But again, this is the best one. After reading this, I actually stayed in the Inheritance Games universe for a little bit. Jennifer Lynn Barnes has a new series called The Grandest Game. It is a sequel series to the Inheritance Games, and I listened to the audiobook, so I don't have it physically in my hand. I can't really tell you the plot without spoilers because there's stuff from the original series that plays a major role in what the plot of this series is. But I can say, you know, without spoilers, that there is romance, there's new puzzles, there's new characters, old characters. It's a good hodgepodge of interesting stuff. Now, did I like it? Yeah, I liked it. I give the Inheritance Games series 4 stars. I give this one particularly 5 stars. Grandest Game, I'd probably give 3 stars. The problem I had with the Grandest Game was just that it felt like a sequel, which probably doesn't make sense, but let me explain. I've noticed with a lot of books, the first book is really good, the second book kind of lulls, and then the third book like goes out in a blaze of glory and is also great. That's how I felt about the Hunger Games, but don't tell anybody because people say Catching Fire is the best one ever, and I just don't understand that. But what I mean is it feels like it's the sequel in the way that it's like, it starts out on a lull. And by the end of the book, you can definitely tell that it's gonna start skyrocketing and getting interesting, but you know, then the book ends. So it did not live up to the rest of the Inheritance Games books, but you know, it was still interesting, it was still fun, and I can tell the series is going to be interesting, you know, down the line. I would still recommend it if you'd read the rest of the series, because at that point, you know, you're already invested in the characters and you want to see what's going to happen next. But definitely do not read it unless you've read the Inheritance Games, because lots of spoilers. But now we're going to move into October. My birthday month, Halloween month, spooky month, and what better way to start October than with Queen of Shadows. Here's the thing about Throne of Glass, okay? Book 1 was not that good. Book 2 was still not that good. Assassin's Blade was honestly kind of the worst one in my opinion, but then we got to Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows. Heir of Fire was really good, and Queen of Shadows was even better. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I am now invested in Throne of Glass, okay? I adore this series. I'm just gonna forget the other ones happened ever. We get development on the new characters from Heir of Fire. We get development on the characters that have been in the entire series. The level of badassery that goes on in this book is unrivaled. The FMCs are the most badass women in the universe, and the MMCs are the most badass men in the universe, which technically makes this the most badass story in the universe. And like, everybody is so hot, and I understand that they're characters on a page, and I know I am a straight man, but come on, you got it. Game recognized game, right? And Rowan, Adian, we're gonna skip KL. Dorian, Manon, dude. Oh my god, Manon. I could talk about Manon for an entire year, bro. Manon Blackbeak, I think, might be my favorite character ever. Actually, Jude Duarte, then Manon. But you know, there's still a couple books to read, so it still could be Manon end of the day. But yeah, I have this thing for women that could kill me. Is it because I want to be killed? No. I just, having that fear, I think, is invigorating. What am I talking about, bro? Basically, Queen of Shadows is the best one in the series so far. And the amount of times that I've had to scream because something crazy happened is well, it's documented on video, actually. I do short form reading vlog videos for every single book of Throne of Glass, so you can see my reaction to like every single major scene in this book. And most of it is me just losing my mind. So yeah, for the rare few who are like me and did not love the first 2 books of this series, or even the first one, I promise you, if you let yourself suffer through those first 2, this will be worth it. I just love looking at it so much. But since it was October, we couldn't just read fantasy, okay? We had to mix it up. We had to get interesting. We had to do spooky. We had to do mysterious. So I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood. Now, if you watched my last video, you likely know my opinion on A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and how much I despise the television show. By the way, thank you guys so much for supporting that video. 10K views in under a week is insane. I really do genuinely appreciate it a lot because that video is the most work I've ever put into a piece of media I've posted ever. So thank you. But I didn't really get to talk about book 2 very much in that video. So without spoilers, let's just talk about this series. I would say, just like the Inheritance games, this is another essential young adult mystery novel, except it is a murder mystery, which was very, spooky Halloweeny. Basically, in 2012, a girl went missing and her boyfriend was found not alive anymore in the woods a couple days later. And following that, the entire world thinks that he killed her and then ended himself. But Pippa Fitzamobi doesn't believe that, and she intends to prove it. The whole book is basically about a high school senior trying to prove a dead man innocent. There's mystery, there's romance, there's major plot twists, especially in book 2, and you'll probably sit on the edge of your seat while feeling an ice cold hand squeeze your heart. Again, especially in book 2. Yeah, I'm so cruel because now you're never gonna know. If you haven't read this book, you will not know if I'm lying or not. I could have just lied to you completely, but now you're scared, and you know what? You have to read the book to find out. All I ask is that you don't watch the show, just read the book, okay? And if you want to know why the show is bad, you can watch my last video, okay? I talk about it extensively with a lot of petty, heartbroken rage, but be warned, it's full of spoilers, so at least read the book first. And I do want to say, if you're gonna read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, or if you've only read the US edition, please read the UK edition. The UK edition is a little bit longer, they have more stuff in there, and it's just kind of better. For some reason, it was localized for America, and it just kind of made the story suffer, I think, in my opinion. So if you can get your hands on the UK edition, do that. This is the US edition. And book 2 basically picks up right where book 1 left off. A lot of my friends who read this series told me that book 2 was kind of bad, but then I read book 2 and I think they're all crazy people because book 2 was really good. Like, it was a little bit slow at the start, I'll admit that, but the plot twists and the stuff that happens in this book is mind-boggling. And honestly, it's a little bit crazier than what happens in this book even. I still think the mystery in this one's better, but it's a good sequel in my opinion. Not every series has to have a bad second book, okay? I know I stereotyped that earlier, but it's not always true. I would give the first book 5 stars, the second book 4 stars, I think, and then the show would get negative stars because it was bad. I think one of the most interesting parts of this series is how intelligent and good at solving mysteries and finding clues Pippa is. And the show doesn't do that. It's just not part of the show. I'm sorry, I'm not over it. I'm just getting emotional. It's ingrained in me. I had to watch that thing 3 times. Let's move on. I must cleanse my palate. I finished off October with One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. It's a young adult gothic romantasy with probably one of the more interesting magic systems I've read recently. And a cool part about that magic system is that there is a price for literally everything. And there's only 2 ways for you to get magic. You either have to get the fever and then survive it and then also avoid getting executed by the king, and then you have magic. But over time, you will degenerate because that's just how magic works. Or the second way is by using Providence cards. And they're basically like velvet playing cards that gift specific magical things. Like, for example, if you use the Black Horse cards, you get the strength of 10 men. And if I'm remembering correctly, there's 12 cards and then multiple of each card. The story itself follows a girl named Elspeth Spindle, which is a really difficult name to pronounce. And she has a fun little guy in her head called the Nightmare. This monster protects her and keeps her safe, right? But the issue is that he is getting stronger. And when you share your head with something and the other thing starts getting stronger, that's a little bit of a concern. So this book has interesting magic and romance, but I didn't love it that much. It was kind of like, oh, hi Arthur, what's up? You gonna come hang out? So it was honestly kind of hard to get through this, and I did DNF it once before, but again, our book club chose it, and so I kind of forced myself to read it. All in all, I gave One Dark Window 3 stars, I think. But here's the thing, something really weird happened. I decided to finish the duology and read Two Twisted Crowns. Everywhere that One Dark Window was not interesting, Two Twisted Crowns was super engaging. And let me tell you, this book is so good. I don't know what happened or how Rachel Gillig changed her writing style. I don't understand how it's possible, but this book is a 5-star book. The characters are more interesting, the stakes are higher, the romance is better. Like, everything that was bad about the first book was amazing in this one. So if you happen to share the same opinion with me on One Dark Window, please read the sequel, because like, and I think my favorite part of this book is that the character of Elm, he is so much more developed and so much more important, and he is so well done. Like, yes, Elspeth is great and her love interest Raven is also great, but like, Elm is such a good character. So honestly, I give the duology as a whole 4 stars because this book really pulled it up for me. And the enemies to lovers plot, dude. Oh, it's so good. Arthur, say nothing if you like this book. Even the cat likes it. Oh, he's such a cute guy. Oh, hello. Oh yeah, and I should mention this book is not spicy, but this book does have a little bit of spice in it. Anyways, moving on. The next book I read in November was Sorcery of Thorns. This is a young adult romantasy, not spicy, but honestly super charming. And the world also felt unique, right? It takes place in a world where magic and grimoires are kind of kept separately. Like there's sorcerers and then there's libraries. And the main character, Elizabeth, was raised in a library and she is terrified of sorcerers for one reason. The only way for you to have magic and be a sorcerer is by making a pact with a demon. And you know, pacts with demons are typically frowned upon in most cultures in the world. So understandably, Elizabeth does not really mess with the sorcerers like that. Problem is, she kind of has to. The problem with the grimoires in this world is when they're disturbed, they may or may not become giant beasts of ink and leather that are capable of killing many people. So that happens, and this girl, our main character, Elizabeth, ends up on the run, and her only ally just so happens to be a potentially charming and very attractive sorcerer. So it tackles themes of enemies to lovers, kind of. It's not super intense, but it's there. And, you know, politics and corruption and stuff like that. Overall, pretty good book. It's really fun. It's really charming. This has been my bedside book. Like every night I read like, you know, 2 chapters of it before I go to sleep. And I really do like the world. I like the world a lot. There is actually a sequel novella that I have, but I have not read it yet. And unfortunately, similar to Powerless and Powerful, it's not the same size. So that's, you know, really annoying. But I do intend on reading this soon, so maybe I'll include it in the next wrap up. Also, while we're talking about it, look at the cover. Isn't it? Okay, you just see light. I have to do this angle because if I do it like that, the light covers. Okay, it's actually not that bad. Look at oh, that's not good. Solid 4-star book. And that about does it for our reading wrap up. This is the last time you guys are going to see this in the autumny look until next year. Next video, it should look all very Christmassy because it's the time of the year. It's the season. We got to get into holiday spirit. Look at Henry Cavill. I'm gonna put a Santa hat on him. I'm 100% putting a Santa hat on Henry Cavill. Anyways, let me grab my giant stack of books to show you guys again. Now in reverse order because I stacked them. Oh, look at all these books. There's so many books. I could do workout with these, but I'm gonna drop them. I don't want to do that. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know. I think this was a little bit more laid back and chill than my normal videos. I wasn't doing as much screaming or getting out of my chair. But I'm just kind of tired today, so I didn't want to get up. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. And, you know, check out my Patreon. I have a bunch of bloopers and mini vlogs and stuff like that on there if you're interested. And until next time, deuces.